In the 1970s, the Kodak Corporation owned nearly all the patents for digital photography in the world, but they did nothing with them. And today, no one identifies digital photography with Kodak anymore. You want to know why and what the mistake means for you as a leader? Well, then stay tuned for another episode of Things I Wish I'd Known Before I Became a Leader. Kodak actually developed and owned most of the patents for digital photography. And as they began to embark on this is back in the 70s when not too many things were digital in those days, but they were heading that direction. As they embarked into a new line of digital cameras, a consultant, a business consultant, high-priced, high-paid no doubt, convinced them to abandon that and to return to their core business, which is film photography. The only problem was that was not their core business. Their core business is not and never was film photography. Their core business was and still is the capturing of images. And that creates all sorts of solutions for people. It builds memories, it records events, it establishes baselines and techniques. It demonstrates in a tutorial fashion what somebody needs to do in some certain sequence for a job. And it supplies those images to any number of other industries. The medium by which that happened changed with time. They didn't. Their core business was no more film focused, no pun intended, than was a Brownie camera. Those were mere technologies and products and their corresponding processes that propel them toward their vision of providing images for commercial and personal use. But they got stuck by bad advice in a system and a process, and they begin to measure their success by their faithfulness to that process rather than the faithfulness to what it is they actually were as a company. They didn't want to deviate from the processes that they had established and from the products that they had developed and the product lines that they had developed because they didn't understand their core business. That's always the challenge for us as leaders. We're caught in a tension between our human inclination to remain faithful to the products, forms, and systems, technologies, methodologies, practices, procedures that we've inherited from people, and the lack of response, growing lack of response to our constituents and customers towards them. I was once asked to take over an organization, this is back in the 1980s, by a person who had founded the organization, and he wanted to move on, and so he had asked me to sort of take it over. I was a little suspicious that that's what he actually wanted. And over a period of time, I began to understand he did not want somebody to take the organization forward. He wanted somebody to take the organization and remain it fixed in its present with its foundation rooted solidly in the past. He wanted a curator of things as they were rather than a leader for what it could be. Now, I checked not too long ago. I went online and they finally got a website after all of these years, and I looked at them and they were doing exactly the same thing in exactly the same way to exactly the same people that they were doing 40 years ago. Still doing the same thing, but their audience is shrinking. Their audience has moved on. They have not. Now, people stay in those systems. They stay faithful to them for three reasons. One, they're comfortable. Like that pair of jeans and an old t-shirt, they fit. We know how they feel. They feel good. They remind us of good times, and they keep us rooted in the past. And their costs are buried in the past, even though their costs get greater as time goes by. Number two, they're reassuring. We've used them before and we've measured the results. We know how to handle them. We know how to manage them. We know how to troubleshoot them, and we become confident in the way that they do what they did, even if they don't necessarily now do what they need to do. We are confident in them because they do well what they did, even if now they don't do what they need to do in order to keep the company viable, to keep the company at the cutting edge of what it used to be. It becomes a relic which is tragic. Kodak became a relic, and it's relegated now to the past. It's got some other product lines, but it never will be what it was before. They gave it up willingly. And the third reason why we do them is because they're manageable. They've been around for a while, so we know what to do with them, and we become fairly adept at controlling them. I find lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of leaders who are stuck here, and they are managing processes even when they don't necessarily work anymore. Their comfort, their reassurance, and their manageability, tend to chain them to us. We are understandably reluctant to abandon them for what may be untried, unproven products, forms, systems, methodologies, practices, and procedures. But just because something is new, doesn't mean we need to make the switch. We need to understand what our core business really is. It's not film photography. It's not film motion pictures. It is the capturing of images for certain purposes. Now, I just taught a workshop just a few days ago for a group of business leaders, and I asked them what their core business was, and I said, it's not what you think it is. It's not the fact that you make certain things or produce certain things. Your core business revolves around the answering of three questions. What question does it answer? What problem does it solve? What dream does it fulfill? So you may run a restaurant, you may have a manufacturing facility, you may have an educational facility, but your product is not the stuff you do. The product is not the things that you do. Your core business, your core product is what that product or service does for somebody else. The questions they answer, the problems they resolve, the dreams that they fulfill. Now, newness is not the only reason for making a change either, and it's not even the most critical criteria. We don't engage in new things simply because they're new. We evaluate and determine, will this help us do a better job at delivering our core business to our customers? And so we look for new methodologies and new products that are going to propel us towards the vision that we have as a company or as an organization, or get us back on track towards our vision, and then and only then should we latch onto something new. Deliberation and then deliberate action are called for. Deliberation about how things really are. And if you have downloaded my book, I have a free ebook called Leadership 101. You can get it at thepracticalleader.com. Just go there, thepracticalleader.com. In the upper right corner, there's a little blue box that says free ebook. You get that, that's Leadership 101. And principle number one of leadership is A equals A. A does not equal what you want it to equal or what you think it ought to equal. A equals A. That is, things are what they are. And once you are honest about things being are what they are and reality being real, then and only then can you begin to lead your organization or your business from where it is, whether it's viable now or it's stagnant now or it's on its way to ruin now. You can make a change, but you have to acknowledge the way things really are, determine what it is that the customer or your clients or your constituents really want and really need and are willing to purchase, and then move forward from there. Lowe's Home Improvement Centers about 8 years ago embarked on the brave new world of reorienting their company in an attempt to bring its forms, systems, and methodologies and practices and procedures into the 21st century. They readily admitted that the probability of doing that were very slim. And I was in there not too long ago, and they haven't done it yet. They're still using in their computer systems, if you can believe this, a DOS-based computer system. DOS, which went out a long time ago. Windows came in 98 or before then, and they never switched, and they still haven't. Now they have this wacko hybrid that doesn't work, and they announced all sorts of things they were going to do, but they were unable to pull it off, mainly because they were unwilling. They lacked courage to spend the money and expend the effort to do what needs to be done. Go down the street to Home Depot, and you'll see an entirely different methodology there. Their computer systems are all Windows-based, and they all work very, very well. And Home Depot is a much larger company than Lowe's is. Why Lowe's lacks the commitment or courage to do this, I can't figure it out, but they still haven't pulled it off. So why am I even talking about this? Because the companies and organizations that survive are those that are best at adapting. They are agile, they are flexible, and they are adaptable. Agility, flexibility, adaptability are the hallmarks of a vibrant company and a dynamic organization. But you have to be able to do that, and you have to give up this worship of how things used to be. And you'll hear it all the time, well, we never did it that way before. That's almost always a death knell. You have to give up that worship and adoration and deification of the past. The past brought you to where you are now, but it will not necessarily get you to where you need to be tomorrow. The past brought you to where you are now, but it will not necessarily get you to where you need to be, have to be, should be, want to be tomorrow. And that is what leadership is all about. Now, on my way to Uganda a few years ago, I had a 12-hour layover in Dubai. And Dubai Airport is fabulous beyond belief. They have excellent accommodations, a hotel right inside the terminal. And so in that 12-hour layover, I checked into a room. I could stretch out, take a shower, get a good rest. And it was a decent price, and I didn't have to clear customs to go out to an outside hotel. So I booked a room, checked in, I wanted to eat, so I go down to the shopping concourse and found a restaurant. And it was upscale and pleasant, and the food was good, and I was ushered to a table and ordered from a colorful and varied paper menu. A few weeks later, on my way back to the United States, stopped in the same airport for another long layover, and after I checked into my hotel, I had made a note of where the restaurant is, and I went there to eat, and the paper menus were gone. The menus had changed. There wasn't any printed menu. The new menu was an iPad. And from that, I could swipe through the pages, make my selection with my fingertip, and that was transmitted to the kitchen, and shortly a server brought the food out to me. He'd been there before, but he didn't have to take any of this. It was all done automatically. The same thing happened to me at, I believe it was JFK. I don't think it was Idlewild. It was JFK Airport in New York City. When I went to have breakfast in that airport waiting for a transfer, same thing. There was no printed menu. There was nobody even at the counter. I ordered on an iPad. I paid with a credit card, and then I waited at another counter, and up come the food. Now, the reason for all of that is that I say all of that is that because fixing on a methodology is okay when you're trying to execute a tactic. But it's certain death if you're trying to build a company and maintain viability and vitality for more than a short time. The methodology is only a means to an end. It is not the end. Now, if you're a manager, you look at things a little bit differently, and this is not necessarily directed to you. But for leaders who lead organizations, leaders who lead companies, leaders who lead businesses, the methodology is only the means to the end. And you must always remember what the core business is that you are in. Leaders, effective leaders, understand the vision, the definition of who it is that they are and what it is that they do and why it is that they exist. And like a distant mountain, that vision may gain clarity and definition over time. You can probably hear my clock in the background. I love old clocks. But like a distant mountain, it gains definition as you get closer to it and you see it more clearly. And effective leaders realize that the means to get there requires modification of processes, systems, methodologies, and even products. And this is where Kodak screwed up. They were not willing to modify the product, and so they ended up with inventories of film and inventories of film cameras when everybody wanted digital. They were indeed a square peg when the world was shaped now with a round hole. That was their problem. No effective business is in business to produce a product or service. It's in business to fulfill a need, answer a question, resolve a problem, fulfill a desire. People who oversee those are good at being managers, but they are not leaders. I wish somebody would have told me about this before I started, because I stepped into an organization that had certain practices in place, and I followed those. As I became head of that, I took over from people who were retiring. And after 2 years, I sat down with my wife and I said, I am not doing this ever again, anymore. We can follow these practices and procedures as well intended and as sacrificial as the previous people may have been. We could do this the rest of our lives and produce nothing. Nothing. And so I said, we're done with this, and we changed our entire structure our entire output, our entire intention. Everything switched and changed, and I'm happy to report that as a result, it worked fabulously well. Fabulously well. And it will for you too. That you are not in the business that you think you are in. You are in the business of doing something that the business you are in does for somebody else. And once you figure that out and remain faithful to that, not the systems, methodologies, practices, and processes. Once you remain faithful to what it is that you do for somebody else, your systems may change, your products may change, your services may change, but the result becomes what it is that it should be. Otherwise, you're almost certainly doomed to failure. I wish somebody would have told me that when I first started. Now, if you like this, I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment down below. Visit our website, thepracticalleader.com. I try to put up these as much as I can. Got a lot going on, but I try to put these up as much as I am able to, hopefully once a week. And I'd love to hear your comments and your own experience in this particular field and how it is that it's working for you. Leave a comment below or go to thepracticalleader.com, hit the contact form, and send me a message that way. We'll talk to you next week.